Hi, welcome to part 3 of fear. Now, we talked in the previous programs that, how fear really does shape our behavior and ourselves as people and our identity individually, but also globally as well. But what I want to do now is talk more about fear and what it does to the body, what it does to our immune system, what it does to us in not a very good way. So let me get straight into it. Now, we know that, it's proven now that fear and stress really does harm the body, and it alters the biochemistry in the blood. And we know now in epigenetics that our cells and our DNA reads the environment around us. So for example, if we're in a negative environment and we're full of fear and we're full of stress and we're full of anxiety, what happens is what we're able to prove is that our immune system hears this. It's kind of almost eavesdropping on the environment around us. It picks up a signal and our cells change, or our cells read differently. And what happens is, as a consequence, is our immune system kicks in and responds to that. But what it does, it responds in a way where it gets weakened. Now, I mentioned before in part 1 and I think in part 2 that prehistorically what happened is when a tiger jumped out and it was chasing us, we would naturally run for our lives. That's the good side of fear, because what would happen is the immune system would get shut down. The reason why is because the immune system's not needed. You've got a tiger chasing you. You don't need your immune system at that point. But what you do need is you need to run, and you need to run fast. So what happens is the immune system shuts down, then the adrenaline and the cortisol gets massive amounts pumped through our bloodstream and our blood flow. But what it does, it goes to the parts of the body where you're needed to escape, which is your arms and which is your legs. So our mind goes blank. Our body really does kind of shut down internally. Our immune system closes off. It's just the flow of blood just gets rushed to our arms and our legs to run. Now that's good, obviously, if you're getting chased by a tiger, but in 2020, things like that don't really happen anymore. But what happens is that when we're subjected to fear, whether that's instant fear or whether that's more on a chronic, in a chronic way, the body still reacts like that. Now that's a problem, because what happens is that our immune system closes down, our adrenaline uses an unbelievable amount of energy, the adrenaline gets pumped through, the cortisol secretes from our kidneys, and that's what happens. The major problem is, as I mentioned, is the immune system gets closed down. Now, because our immune system isn't working properly or efficiently, that's when we get, bacterial infections. That's why we get viruses. That's why we get infections. That's why we get the flu. That's why somebody who's normally got a good immune system may get the coronavirus, because they're stressed and they're fear and they're panicked. Now, that's what happens physiologically. So what I'm saying is our environment, our brain perceives that. So our brain perceives that information as being scared or being fearful. Then our minds interpret that. And then that's when the irrational side of fear in most occasions happens. So what we need to pay attention to is our environment and how we interpret that information. How do we not let that affect our bodies, our immune system? Because our immune system, as everybody knows, is critical for health and well-being and for vibrancy. So we've really got to make sure that we're aware of that and we're mindful of it. Now, before in program 1 and I think in program 2, we alluded to, when we're born, from the ages of being born to 7 years old, we don't really have a developed conscious mind. What we do when we're at that child age is we're in theta wave, which is the state of the brainwave, the state of hypnosis. Why is that important? Well, it's important because when we're children, what we are is we have programs, we download programs, we download information. Why is that important? Well, it's really important because we get hypnotized into fear. Now, we get some good things, downloaded into our minds and into our brains, but we get a lot of negative things as well. We get a lot of negative beliefs. We get a lot of fear installed in our minds. Now, that installation and that program doesn't come from ourselves. It comes from the external environment, which is often the parents, or it may be the external environment. It may be a teacher, it may be a friend when you're a child. So we have to be careful with that, because our thoughts and our belief systems are not ours. We've more or less took them from other people because we've downloaded that information as a baby and as a child. There's that saying, show me the boy at 7 years old and I'll show you the man. Meaning that, when you get to 7 years old, the behavioral system, the belief system you have, what you've downloaded, you take that into adulthood. And that is true, because, I'll give you an example of fear. I remember as a child, when my dad would find a spider in the living room, and he would pick that spider up in the palm of his hand. And what he would do is show it my mum, and my mum would go crazy. She would freak out. She would run into the bathroom. She would lock the door and all that kind of thing. And I remember that. I remember that because I remember thinking, wow, what's happened? Now, me, as a 7 years old and growing up, guess what happened to me? Yep, you've guessed it. I was terrified of spiders. Was that my belief? Well, no, because it was downloaded to me and programmed in my mind that, hey, look, spider, react, gone. Okay, now it's not much of a problem these days, but the example I'm trying to make here, that was a minor example, but on a serious level, we download a lot of negative things, well, as children. So the fears and the beliefs and the scaring and the stress and the anxiety and the panic, are from other people, which, as I mentioned, is usually our parents. I'm not blaming all parents, but it's a real fact. So now we are mindful of that. We've got to do something about it, and we've got to be careful that our environment, the energy, the signals, the negative energy we get and we interpret doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect our minds, but it also doesn't affect our system, our immune system and our body and our biochemistry. So it's really, really important that you as a person watching this video is aware that fear suppresses the immune system. It's a fact. Now I can back that up in science. Now, when a person is in the hospital having a transplant, let's say, for example, a heart transplant, what happens is before they put the other person's heart into that person, what they do is they pump them full of adrenaline. Now, what happens is the immune system shuts down, and the reason why is because the immune system would pick up on that. That's not their heart. So your immune system would naturally try to attack that transplant, that heart. Why is that relevant? Well, if somebody's been pumped full of adrenaline, they know that the immune system stops because it's going to attack the heart. Well, that's proof then, because that means then in reality, and when we're going about our business, when we're terrified and fear and panicked, the adrenaline gets pumped massive amounts, the immune system stops. The biochemistry is changed. The cells are responding to that in a negative way. The DNA reads it differently, because we know with epigenetics that's what happens with the environment. So really, really pay attention to that. Really think about that. Now, there's more work going into it. There's more medical evidence in terms of psychoneuroimmunology, which means that the environment affects our state of mind, our brains and our minds, and in return affects our whole system. So please take care of that. We have now the coronavirus, and that's been going now for what, probably, I don't know, maybe 9 months, and people are scared and people are panicked. They read the media, the politicians are scaring people. Anybody with a compromised immune system, yes, absolutely should take care. They should, no doubt, absolutely. But people who are healthy, people who have got good immune systems, don't need to get scared about coronavirus, because what will happen is when you get subjected to the virus, which you probably will, if you've got a good, strong, healthy immune system, your body will fight it. Your body will get rid of the virus. It may have already happened, even without you knowing so. That's just a little side topic. I just wanted to get that in because, we live in a time now where it's just incredibly scary for people and everybody's wearing masks, and, that's a judgment call whether you think you should wear a mask or not. Certainly, if you've got a compromised immune system, I'd highly recommend you staying indoors. But again, if you are generally healthy, if your immune system is good and it's strong, then please, be free of any worry and any panic, because what that will do is that then becomes paradoxical. What I mean by that is if you're scared, fear, stress, tense and anxiety, if you do get that virus, it's going to affect you even more. So please pay attention to that. Now, I mentioned about the immune system. The word system is key because the fear, I've got this saying that fear breaks systems. Okay? Fear breaks systems. What do I mean by that? Well, we already know that too much fear breaks the immune system, but also fear breaks the ecosystem. Fear breaks the economical system. Fear breaks the social system. So you've got all this fear floating around and giving bad, negative mass energy. It breaks systems. And the reason why is because most people are in this fight mode or fight or flight mode. They're in this protection mode, and we know about the Darwinian theory about, it's survival of the fittest. And I really disagree with that, because what that causes, it causes people to behave and react in a very, very fierce, competitive, aggressive way where, I need to survive, and it's the survival of the fittest. So if it's telling you that if you're strong and you're, and you're going to survive, and if you're weak and frail, you're not going to survive. And I disagree with that, because what happens is in society, people have picked up on that. They become more materialistic. Corporations become more aggressive. There's this competition rather than cooperation. And because the fear is kicked in, we now are destroying the planet. We are now destroying the ecosystem. Back in 2008, we had the economic crisis where the banks had done crazy, stupid things with money, and that could be down to greed. But if you think about greed, ultimately it boils down to fear. So that broke the economic system. Fear can break the social system and also the political system as well, because fear really does get inside not just inside the mind, but it gets into the cracks of society. And a lot of the time it's very, very, very unconscious. You know, people will argue with you and say, I'm not fearful, I'm not scared. You know, what they don't realise is the greed they have, where they want to buy the new car, or they want to, you know, companies want to outcompete people. They could say that's greed and competition, but really it's fear. It's the fear of losing out. It's the fear of losing. It's the fear of not becoming accepted, or not becoming the number one, what a lot of people want to be. I'm not against competition per se, but what I am against is this notion of survival of the fittest. And I've seen people who are wealthy individuals, but they're terrified. I know somebody who's got enough money and he's set up for life, but you know what? He's terrified. You know why? Because he's terrified of losing it. So he spent years building up a successful business, which he did well at. One could argue that he was driven by fear, but his personal side is not so great. His relationships aren't so great. Why? Because he's fearful. He's scared of talking to me. Why? Because he doesn't want an intimate conversation about what he might discover about himself. That person, growing up from between 0 and 7 years old, you know, I know from growing up, I know that fear, rejection, abandonment was installed to him as a child. Well, that rejection and that abandonment, what that caused is the fear of abandonment, the fear of loss, the fear of having bad health, which he's scared of. But it's paradoxical, because he's got that fear inside him, lowering his immune system, that's ultimately going to give him bad health. So I might have gone off a little bit on the subject, but it really does highlight the effects of fear. And more often than not, it's unconscious. It's unconscious fear. So think about that. Think about the systems. I told you what fear does to fear. What it does to the systems. It crushes systems simply because of fear. You know, the next door neighbour wants to, what we call, keep up with the Joneses. You know, wants to compete with everybody, wants the biggest car. You know, why? It's fear. It's the fear of not being good enough. It's the limiting beliefs, which is fear. So have a think about that. Have a think about, you know, what it really does to the body, what it really does to the immune system, what stress does. Remember, adrenaline gets pumped through, it shuts down the immune system doesn't work. That's when you get bad health. That's when we get cancer. That's when we get diseases. You know, in the past, in past medicine, they used to say, well, you know, your genes, you know, affect your life. They affect your outcome. No, it's not. It's the environment what affects your genes. Now, the good news about that is that means then you are in control of that. Whereas before there was the belief that you're not in control. They used to say, oh, you've just got faulty genes. No, actually, it's not that. It's the environment, it's the fear. What affects the human mind, the brain, the blood chemistry, the immune system, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and everything else going behind it. So really be mindful of that. Well, one last thing. As a child, you know, what happens now today is we wrap them up in cotton wool. You know, now look, it's really subjective, and it's a value judgment on how you should protect your child. And I'm not giving any parental advice, but what I do know is that in modern day, I know that we wrap our children in cotton wool and we protect them. That's okay. The problem with that is that if we don't let our children express themselves and play out in the dirt and get their hands dirty and get their face muddy, what happens is we keep them now back. We withhold them from them going out and falling down and grazing their knee. We stop them from playing out in the dirt and in the mud. what's that going to do? Well, their immune system isn't going to develop. So that again becomes paradoxical, because you're wanting them to be safe, and I understand that, but through them not being exposed to bacteria, because we know bacteria causes viruses, if you're not exposing your child early on to develop their immune system, or they're going to grow up with a weakened immune system, or a less of a stronger one. So I really want you to bear that one in mind as well. And I think that's all I need to say on fear. There's more I can say. There's more I can say about why we need to be careful and not get sold on fear by our politicians and all the media and everything. But I think I've covered most of fear. Remember, it's unconscious. Remember that, as a child, when you was being born from 7 years old, remember you was just a person or a child in theta wave in a state of a hypnosis. You didn't know any difference. You just got lots of information programmed into your mind and you downloaded it. So your fears, your negative belief system, your belief system about yourself, if it's negative, isn't you. It was given to you, so you downloaded that. The good news is you can change that. If you want to know more about that, if you want to ask some more questions, listen, please feel free to comment below. Share my channel. I'd really appreciate it, because I want to help people. And the only way I can help people is by spreading the message on the John Clayton Academy. And my goal is to play my part in helping change the planet. Not in an ego way. I just want to help people more than ever now because of what's going on in society. That's me done for today. Thank you very much for listening. Watch out for more videos. I'm going to do a lot more on psychology, on epigenetics, on psycho neuroimmunology and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for the future. Thanks very much for watching and have a great day. Thank you.